Hey everyone, welcome to the Meet Follower of One live stream. Hi Lynn, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
How are you,
It's
Mike?
nice when the technology works. I always have to remember to turn on my mic though. I always start talking while I'm muted for some reason. Some new safety feature I guess they put on here. They're afraid I'm going to introduce some idea into the chat. But anyway, welcome to Meet Follower of One, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So what I'd love for you to do is, here in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. I want to say hi to Chris and Heather, who are on here, helping out and paying attention to the chat and things like that. So thank you for joining us. And Lynn, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to people and let them know a little bit about you.
Okay. My name is Lynne Farrell. I live in the Arlington, Virginia area, and I have been pursuing a dream that the Lord put on my heart for the last few years. And so my background is that I taught women's Bible study through community Bible study for years. So I realized that one of my giftings was teaching. And so having 20 some odd years of experience with community Bible study, knowing the pattern of a women's in-depth group study, I actually wrote my own a few years ago. And it's based on kind of my testimony of Jesus's redemption. And after writing it and leading it for a few sessions, I was asked to do it as a retreat. And so I've been teaching women's retreats, and that's really what I love doing. But I realized very quickly that if I wanted this material to go far and wide, I'd need to do something more than video. I need to do something more than retreats. I needed to videotape it. So most recently, I have videotaped the retreat in 8 segments, published the video, the women's study guide to go with it, and was just licensed with RightNow Media about a month ago.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Kind of hard to believe. I'm pinching myself and praising God at the same time. And I don't know what the Lord wants to do with the project from here. I really did not think it was going to go commercial first. I thought it would be used in smaller ministries, perhaps jail ministries or anti-trafficking, those sorts of places, but hasn't really, that hasn't really started yet. It's really the first thing that started was the commercial space. So I don't know if you needed to know all that, but that's a little bit about how I've come into the marketplace after being in women's ministry for many years.
Very cool. And your website is seenandbeloved.com, correct?
That's right.
I'm sitting here looking at your LinkedIn profile on my other screen. I want to encourage people to connect with you on LinkedIn or through the community. Reach out to Lynn, find out more. Lynn, also, I'd love to get you, after this is over, you can shoot me or Chris Castro, or both of us, a note and let us know a link to your RightNow Media content.
Okay,
and
great.
We will feature it, because people who are in Follower of One, whether they're aware of it or not, you get a free membership in RightNow Media, so you can watch all the streaming content they have. Follower of One has three little devotional series in RightNow Media, or you could get Lynne's Seen and Beloved video content, her video training series in RightNow Media as well. It's a great resource.
It is. It is. It's funny because when God first put this dream on my heart, the goal for me was like, when you knew you made it, it would be RightNow Media, right? Because that's the only platform I know of that uses this kind of thing, other than people who are really famous have their own platform and sell their own, video series. And we used to get him on the CDs and put him into the CD player, and the DVD player, and do our studies that way. But RightNow Media and other platforms like that have really changed the world. So when I submitted this, I just said, Lord, if this is how you want it to go far and wide, your will be done. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of amazing, really.
Yeah. Very cool. And I see Gene Greenan has joined us as well. Thanks for joining, Gene. So we're talking with Lynne Farrell from the Arlington, Virginia area. It says several people are typing. So Chris Castro helped me keep up with all this stuff. And, but anyway, I'm excited, Lynne. So tell us a little bit more about your passion with regard to helping women.
Well, I think it goes back, and it does so many times, to people's individual testimonies, right? Kind of where the Lord really met us in a powerful, unique way. I had been a Christian for about, 8 or 9 years, I would say. And I had come so far in fruit bearing and serving, and just, I knew when I died, I was going to heaven, but I seriously could not understand a lot of the verses in the Bible about abundance and about freedom and about life to the full. My life was better because of Christ, no doubt. And I'm not ever saying that it wasn't, but there were areas in my life where I really couldn't say I was living abundantly. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. I kind of thought, well, when I get to heaven, or when I'm a little bit more sanctified, I will start experiencing what Jesus is describing, right? But I struggled with that because I felt like Jesus was talking about a kingdom that came, a kingdom that's here, right? So why is it that I'm thinking that it's going to be in the future and I'm not experiencing it now? I started praying that. I started praying, Lord, if these verses mean now, show me what that means. And he started showing me some areas in my life that I had great bondage. And the bondage was what was preventing me from really experiencing. It's not like you get saved and all these things that you've shoveled under the rug suddenly are healed. That's not the way it works, right? You're nodding your head. You know what I'm talking about. But somehow I had believed that. And I don't know if it was kind of a theology I took on based on the people that were teaching. I don't know where it came from.
A lot of people teach it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, I do think that some of it was that I was being told, yeah, that's about heaven, right? And how spectacular heaven's going to be, which I still like. Again, I don't doubt that, but to really experience these things this side of heaven, I needed breakthrough, and I needed tools to help me break through. And that's what I found when I started praying for it. Not to get into the weeds or about all the different ways that he works in our lives, because we're all individuals, and he's got to meet us in a place that's very personal and very unique. And that's what he did. And I think that's why I call my study, my retreat, Scene, Discovering the Freedom to Be Authentically You. Because especially the verses about identity, I really, really didn't believe. I read them, I tried to believe them, I said I believed them, but I didn't feel them. I really didn't. I still didn't like myself very much. And so when I started to experience these things in various forms and through various tools, I felt very seen by the Lord. And it's then I could say, wow, I absolutely understand that he loves me this much, that I'm a child of his, that this is my inheritance, right? This is something he's giving me. I just need to open my hands and receive it.
Yeah.
And so knowing this about myself, and knowing that I had this incredible breakthrough, that, to be honest, there are some days when some more layers of healing come off, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't even know that was still there.
Yeah.
But praise God, he continues to show me how much he adores me. And so that was when I started doing the Bible study, I just started with a few women in my neighborhood. It was the beginning of COVID. The women that the Lord put in my life did not have any family in town, and they couldn't see
Hmm.
their friends, but I made a space available every Saturday morning. Come to my place. If nobody else sees anybody during the week, we can come together on Saturdays. So that's what we would do. And I started writing this study that all of it was bending towards this idea that I just described.
Hmm.
And so once I started teaching that and seeing the response that I received from the people, the breakthrough that I was receiving from the women
Hmm.
that were participating, that's when I felt like the Lord wanted me to take it a little bit further.
Yeah. Well, it's very cool. You and I talked about a little bit of this when we first met, and because I agree, I think we learn everything better when we teach it, and so it becomes much more personal, and we internalize it more, especially when we're on the hook to tell someone else. And
Absolutely.
this idea that we're not all teachers, I really think comes from the enemy, because we've all been given the opportunity to help someone else. God created us to be influenced by others.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've all been put in a position both to be influenced and to influence other people. And when we step into that role, we become better at what God has called us to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy for me to focus on myself so much that I become useless,
Yeah.
or when I focus on other people, then I immediately become helpful. It's this idea that I think we can take ourselves out, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, sometimes that training about, everything's going to be great when we get to heaven and all those kinds of things, it kind of, we receive the wrong message. Whether or not it was intended is not something I can judge. But I told you about the book title Eternity is Now in Session by John Ortberg.
Yes.
That's based on a sign that Dallas Willard used to have in his office.
Mm.
And it's about how, the good news is the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's here now. We don't have to wait to get there. We don't have to hope our ticket is good. We get to enjoy it right now. So to me, that is the biggest and most fun part of being a believer, is we get to play now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny now that I know, kind of have realized this and understand this a little bit better. I see it in women and in men,
Uh-huh.
but especially because of my ministry, I see it in women who are free and who are walking in that freedom, can talk openly about their lives. They can
Hmm.
be more transparent. And what happens inevitably in communities like that is they knit together.
Hmm.
You share your hard story, and the women in your group don't go running for the hills. They actually lean in and they pray, and they have compassion for what you've been through. And all shame needs is light, right? It
Hmm.
loves the darkness. You keep it in the dark, it'll stay active. But the minute you shine light on it, it loses its power. And so what
Yes.
happens in these communities that I have seen where there's transparency, and it starts with the leader, really. And that's why I think my retreats have been successful, because I share my story. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly are just right on out there. But we don't stop there, and we don't talk about the details. We go on
Hmm.
and talk about how God's redeemed it.
Hmm.
And so there's hope. And I feel like that's what women need to hear. That's what men need to hear as well. We all need to hear that not only is this story going to be used in God's kingdom for something good, but every time this story is told, more and more healing is going to come to you as well.
Hmm.
And the community at large benefits, and the ability to love others grows. It's just I feel like it's the key. It's
Hmm.
really it's been the key for me to open up all of the fruits of the spirit, to open up many giftings of the Spirit that I didn't recognize and I didn't know I had. I didn't know I had the access to. It's been incredibly. It's just been the life changer for me, and that's where
Yeah.
this ministry comes from.
So now, do most of your retreats, are those like those church based, or
Yes.
somebody's just basically church puts together like a women's retreat and you speak at
Yes.
that?
That's what it's been. A friend of mine and I are talking about doing a kind of a parachurch retreat locally, because a lot of these churches now don't do women's retreats, don't do men's retreats, right? So we're talking about putting one together specifically for this whole idea, and then and seeing what God, does with that.
Okay. Well,
So
very cool. And I want to invite anybody listening or on this call, let's, be thinking about what you can do or what we could do. I personally, I wish I could get us all together, but one of the cool things about the internet is that we can at least connect in some degree here. And so you just never know what will come out of all of these. In fact, I'd be happy if I suggested to you, I know there are a bunch of ladies in Follower of One who are also very passionate about women's ministry types of things, including Chris Castro, who's our community manager. And so I want to encourage you to connect with one another and come up with, let's create some materials or do something that we could do in Follower of One. I'd be happy to connect people in any way that we can so that we're helping each other live out our faith.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about these communities, I've joined a couple of these communities now. FDE, Faith-Driven Entrepreneur. That's how I met you, Mike, through Addison Williams, who led a group. And I joined a group. I call myself an entrepreneur, but I don't really, I don't really have a business. Like, I have this little thing going on that I want to grow. But I'm connecting with these groups because I want to hear ideas and ways and tools that I can integrate or promote through my ministry, because it's not just go watch the video series and you're done, right? Go do this Bible study and you're done. That's not how it works. There are a lot of tools out there I've discovered, and I want to be creative with how this ministry reaches women and potentially eventually men in some form, but in order to bring them this freedom that we've been talking about. Because you can be a Christian for many years and not really be walking in this. And so I would love any suggestions, any ideas of things to also promote through my ministry.
Well, and one of those is the Follower of One Marketplace mission trip. So you're going to be doing that on the next one of our mission trips that's coming up in July, correct?
Yep. Looking forward to it.
And so I'm excited because I really think that when we start moving, then God starts directing us more than if we just sit around and asking him, okay, Jesus, if you tell me what to do, then I'll get up and I'll go put my clothes on and I'll go do it. And so Heather's actually saying, yeah, she's on the next mission trip too. I think it's kind of interesting because what we do is we connect a little better on the mission trips and we learn different things. And we've been practicing and trying different things with the Marketplace mission trips for a while. And so I'm excited to see how God works through this. And what he does. And also we want to we're working hard to introduce churches to the Marketplace mission trip idea to help them kind of get their people moving, because most of us don't have a lot of time to be doing things at church over and above what we're already doing.
Right.
But we can be doing much more with our faith when we realize that we integrate it into how we spend our everyday.
Mm,
And so that's what we wanted to help people do with the mission trip.
that's great.
Now I was putting around on your website. Tell me a little bit about your children's book.
Well, so if you ever had an idea that you knew was from God and you followed through on it and it was a flop, don't give up. That's the goal. I knew the Lord was calling me to write a children's book. I I still don't know all that he's done with it, but I wrote this book. I found this woman who was in my Bible study who was an illustrator, and she just brought beautiful life to the words.
Mhm.
And it's basically a story of a grandfather bike and his grandson bike. And they go on a
Okay.
ride through creation, and grandfather bike teaches his grandson about the great one. And it really turned out to be way cuter than I thought it was going to be. The pictures just brought it to life. It was really cute, but I had hundreds of these books in my closet years later because I didn't realize how hard it would be to market those. I had other stuff going on in my life. I didn't have the time. I didn't really spend that much money. I thought it was just I was going to put it out there and God was just going to do with it what he would. And he did. So about 10 years after I wrote the book, had hundreds of copies sitting in my closet. We were cleaning out the closet, and my husband just said, why don't you just give those to the Dream Center? Now, the Dream Center in DC is a center that was set up by our church, actually, to be an after-school respite center for children in Southeast DC. And they do all sorts of amazing things, right? So DC Dream Center got a bunch of these books, and I'm not exactly sure what they did with them, but they don't have them anymore, so they've distributed them. But then shortly thereafter, our church was doing something called the Extravaganza for Easter. And the pastor that was leading it said, I really want to have some sort of gospel presentation, but I don't want it to be me standing on a stage giving the gospel. And I said, well, I have this is going to be for children, right? I have this children's book that I'm trying to get rid of anyway. How about if I do like a book signing? I come and I give the books away and I do a book signing, and then they go home with the gospel, right? So that's what we did. And people were, kids were excited. You were the author, you wrote this book, so that was fulfilling, right? That was really exciting. But at the very end, I was putting stuff away, and this old man walked up to me, and probably easily 80 years old. And he walked up to me and he put his hand on his heart and he said, did you write this book? And I said, yes. And he goes, oh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever read. And I said, it is? And he said, this touched me like you'll never understand. And the man had tears in his eyes. So something about that grandfather by teaching his grandson really touched this man. And I went home that night and I was like, we just don't know what we're doing, how it's affecting the one person or thousands of people. We have no idea.
Correct.
If we are just obedient to what God has called us to do, and we just listen for what he wants us to do with it, even if it's 10 years later and you think you're just trying to get rid of junk, it might actually be a way to bless people. So
very cool.
Blessed me most of all, I think.
Well, I'm glad I asked. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's on the About page on your website. So it's called Bernie's Forever Gift. And for those of you who are listening, you can find this on seenandbeloved.com, beloved.com on the About page. And so scroll down there. You can click through to Amazon and get a copy of it. And you just never know, right?
You just don't know.
Well, very
His
cool.
ways are not our ways, right?
So tell me I've learned this question recently, and I want to start asking it more. So what are you doing next that's most exciting to you?
Wow, that's a really good question.
I know, that's why I stole it. I
Yeah.
stole it from Craig Rochelle.
If you had if you'd asked me this question last week, I probably wouldn't have had an answer. But last week I met with some of the women who mentor the children at that DC Dream Center that I was
Oh,
talking
cool.
about. Some of the women that mentor, um, with the idea that, here's this tool that you can use in your small groups, and several of them want to use it. And so we're having a follow-up meeting tomorrow to talk about what that looks like.
Very
Um,
cool.
and what I'm really hoping, there's lots of ways this can go and lots of things that I really am praying for. But one of the pieces I really would love to see is, if I could have a way to mentor these women while they're mentoring.
Hmm.
So I could have an influence on these women. Many of them, they were 30, 40 years younger than I am, and they're really solid in their faith. Many of them were sharing some of their hard stories. I know that they're really have been discipled well, and they're
Hmm.
amazing women. But I think it would be a real honor and privilege to be able to mentor these women, come alongside these women as they're using this, and be a resource to them in some way.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that's very exciting.
Yep.
We don't think a lot about it, but mentoring someone, going out of our way to be able to invest in someone else's life, it matters. Jesus makes it all matter.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
excited about what you're doing. I'm excited to learn more. I think it'll be interesting to see how things um, come into being through you continuing to push into what God has for you to do, and to the degree that anybody in Follower One can help you. I'm excited about what God's doing. I really believe. So I think, just, I don't know if you even heard me say this before, but my dream is to run the bar where all the busy Christians hang out. And that's what we hope Follower One is just a place where busy Christians get together and do stuff.
Mm,
And
I love it.
so
I love
I'm
it.
excited.
Thank you. I'm excited too. I'm always excited to hear God's on the move, right? He's
Yes.
not he's not done.
No, it's always, what it's also working. He's on his schedule. Everything's happening according to his time. I'm typically either trying to hurry him up or slow him down. And he keeps saying, "Hey, I'm driving here. You're riding."
Right. Right. Well, in 2020, he called me out of the ministry I had been in for so many years, and didn't know why. My husband and I moved from a single family home where I was near a lot of friends, and moved us down closer to the city, closer to our church. You naturally think, okay, this is what he's doing. I'm gonna somehow be more involved in my church. And um, I would say I'm probably not as involved in the church as I thought I was going to be, and certainly where I was before. And so I I don't really understand it all. I have a couple of years where I'm just like, what is going on? I have days when I'm bored out of my mind. I wake up some days feeling like I don't have a lot of purpose.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden something happens in the, shifts in the kingdom, and everything changes all of a sudden, and you're like, oh, that's why you moved us down here. This is why, right? It's a one step at a time. He gives you
Mhm.
light enough to take the next step, and that's about all he gives us, right?
Mhm.
I want the whole plan laid out in front of me ahead of time so I can agree with it or take it a different way, but maybe that's what he's afraid of. I'm going to
Yeah.
try to
Well,
hijack.
yeah, that's a great story, because I agree with you. I think we think so small when we believe that church activity happens at the church. We're the church, and so wherever our activity is wherever the church is.
Right.
And that's, I hope that we become a little less property focused and a little more mobilization oriented, right? Activating believers to do whatever crazy idea the Lord gives them.
Right.
And so I'm excited for you in that.
Yeah. Thank you. It does take courage. I have to say, it really, especially when you write a book or, I mean, do anything that's you're putting yourself out there in a way where people are going to criticize. I know I've heard people say, don't look at the reviews after you write a book because, you know, people won't write a review if they liked it, but they'll write one if there was something in it they didn't like or disagreed with, right? So you got to have thick skin. And I think really, I mean, everything that we do for the Lord, it takes, especially in the culture we're living in, you've got to have courage. You've got to believe that the Spirit is the power behind everything you do. It's not, none of this is my doing, right? It's the Holy Spirit that gives us the ideas in the first place. So it's the Holy Spirit that's going to carry it out. And so,
Yeah, actually, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So I do things and I tell the boss. That's my story. I don't even call myself the CEO of Follower of One. I call myself the chief instigator. And when things happen that are not what I was hoping for, I tell the boss. I mean, that's my job. And I tell Jesus this stuff like he doesn't know it, and he keeps going, "Yeah, Mike, I know." And
the chief instigator, huh? I like that.
yeah. So I just want to start the trouble, but we lean into him, and I think that's our calling. And there are times when I get a little discouraged and I whine to God and I wish he'd have made me somebody who could sit around and watch TV all day or somebody who could play golf all the time. But I'm just not that guy. And so, I'd rather screw up. And so it's kind of cool. You go screw things up and Jesus handles it.
He fixes it, right?
He makes it work.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited, grateful for you and the book and your ministry. I'm excited to see what happens. I hope you connect with the ladies who are watching today, like Heather and Chris and some of the other people in the community. And I'm excited to try and do things. I would love to invite you to put some of your content in our community or share enough of it so people can connect with you.
Okay.
And then hopefully we can do another conversation like this after you've done the mission trip, and we'll get your thoughts on all that as well. It'd be cool.
That would be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to think of who I can invite because I think it's one of those things that doesn't appear to be as time consuming as maybe it sounds at first, and it seems like it's I think the timing for me is great because I feel right now I've got to keep my focus. The idea of I would love to do a silent retreat right now for a couple of days. I don't have time to do that, but this will kind of be a shot in the arm every day of exactly what I need. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Yeah, and the devotionals are 5 minutes each day. We have basically 8 calls. The beginning Sunday, the middle Sunday, the end Sunday, and then the 5 days of the second week. We have Zoom calls. And you make what you can of those. Every time you make a call, you hear more about other people's stories and what's going on in their week. And you just become more a part of what God is doing in this community of people who get together on Zoom and then do a mission trip to wherever they work.
I love it. I love it.
So, and that's what we're doing with Follower of One is we're actually talking to more churches and other ministries about partnering together so that, we try and get people to realize once you start doing this, you realize that God is busy doing stuff right now, just like what we were talking about. He's working right now. And I can be a blessing to somebody that I work with every day, but don't pay a lot of attention to by just paying attention to them.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to being seen, right? When a person
Mm-hmm.
feels seen by
That's right.
us, it changes everything, right?
That's right.
Really does.
So, well, thank you so much for being a
Thank you,
part of
Mike.
this.
I appreciate you having me on here. And I look
Well,
forward to
and
seeing what God's going to do through Follower of One, and maybe we'll form a women's group here and be able to kind of pool our resources. That would be awesome.
yes, yeah, it would be great. Well, thanks very much. And to everyone who's listening in on the podcast or the recording of this as well, we'll put this on YouTube, Lynn, also, and then we can share it to people that way as well.
Great. Thank you
All right.
again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. And thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.